All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Beholding Him. Beholding Him is all about becoming enamored and knowing better the ways and names of God. It is one of my great honors to have two people who have been a great impact on myself and my family in significant ways when it comes to abuse, when it comes to understanding God's heart concerning abuse, and ones that really have put so many people in the hand with the God who restores and with the God who heals. So I want to welcome Bob and Polly Hamp tonight as our guest. Welcome to both of you. What an honor.
Good evening. Thanks.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Super excited to be here.
Yeah.
Such a joy.
Good to have you.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just said good to have you all.
Yes. And I was saying this earlier, Joe rarely joins me, but he was very excited to jump on tonight. And so I'm super excited to have him with us because this is a topic we are very passionate about. And I have said this to you guys off camera, but I just want to say it again publicly. I want to thank you for all that you do with your, I like to call it a ministry, Think Differently Counseling, Think Differently Academy. Because years ago, when I was going through a very painful divorce and having been married to someone with narcissistic personality disorder and schizophrenia, and it was all very painful, all confusing, the typical story that I think you guys really do deal with a lot, you hear a lot. But for me, I had someone to send me, actually had three different people to send me a video that you shared, Bob, in 2017 on abuse and spiritual abuse. And I sat on my bathroom floor and I wept and I wept because I felt the love of God. I felt such clarity. I felt like somebody was telling my story.
Yeah.
And it was such a healing moment for me to know God cares. God's not okay with abuse. And I know I am only one little dot, little speck of the many people that really need to hear this story, that really need to know God's heart concerning this. And so thank you for all that you guys do. Thank you for putting people in the hand of the God who heals and the God who restores. Thanks for being brave and sharing with so many, because it is not a dramatic thing for me to say. Our lives have truly been changed by what you guys do.
Well, Suzanne, it's interesting you bring up that video because there are many ways that video changed our lives.
Yeah, it did.
And we share, obviously there was circumstances and things leading up to that, some of which we can share on, tonight. But teaching that video for me was a moment of clarity, or followed a moment of clarity. And at that point, we were teaching every Tuesday night live just to kind of put stuff out into the ethos to give people some hope and healing. And when we put that out there, you said 3 people sent it to you in a week. I'm thinking there must have been about 3,000 people every week for the next 6 months after that.
Yeah.
Because what we put out there is a kind of a typical Tuesday night teaching format wise, suddenly started a tsunami in response. Like everything we've taught has kind of gone along like this a little bit, a lot of views, not so many. And then all of a sudden we put that out there and it was an overwhelming response in such both intensity and quantity that I just wish that people could understand. People think, oh, there's a little bit of a problem with abuse out there. It is because people feel so much shame about it.
Yes.
And people feel so confused about it that those two things work together to keep people shut behind closed doors, not talking about it.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, something about that video got out into the atmosphere and people wanted to talk to us. And, we found different people that had shared it and different people who had watched it. And there is no typical story, by the way. There are some predictable things, but no two people are alike. And so there is no typical story, except that there's pain and there's freedom. And so putting that video out there opened a whole world to us that we thought was just kind of a world that we had walked through.
And we know abuse is out there. It's something we navigate with our clients, and all that. But the way he described it, the way he saw it, the way he was able to put language and a picture to the dynamics of abuse.
Yes.
Like, it caught the hearts of so many people going, oh my gosh. I mean, we still get emails, messages like
This week.
To this week, I finally got out. I finally see it because of this video, and now I can get out. And
Yes.
or I'm working on getting out. Will you please pray? And so there's just a multitude of people that are still like reaching out, going, thank you for helping me see the way I'm created to see and be.
Yes. Yes. And the message that you both carry, I've never heard, I shared with you off camera that it was hard for me to find much on narcissistic personality disorder in the Christian counsel. I just couldn't find it as far as teaching online, especially that didn't lean towards bitterness and kind of staying in the pit. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I don't want to stay in the pit. I don't want to be angry. But when I found when people sent that video to me, it was such a profound aha moment of, I felt the hope. I felt the hope of Christ, and that is what I need. I needed to know that, one, God wasn't mad at me.
Right.
Because like you say, there's so much shame that is attached to, and especially when I know people didn't necessarily intend to give the message of, you need to try harder.
Yeah.
You need to love harder. But I had plenty of that. I even had, I had a counselor, tell us after some wild things had happened, and I was scared for my life, and I was getting ready to get my first EPO. And he said, you guys need to go on a date and remember why you connect in the first place. And I thought, oh my gosh, and I always wanted to do better and be better and try harder. And
Sure.
And it wasn't working. And, you get to a point, it was so escalated, and he was stalking anyway. It was a lot.
What I think people don't realize, and I don't mean to cut you off, but what I think people don't realize is that when you create a culture that values marriage above all else,
above safety, above sanity. Yeah.
Now, listen, we value marriage. I still work with people today to save marriages. Yes. I believe in the value of keeping marriages intact. Yes. However, when you create a culture that values marriage above all else, including truth, including, like Polly said, safety, then what happens is you create a haven for predators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You create and by haven, I literally mean a place where they can come, have their way, and be protected.
Yes.
And the blindness of people to the fact that, if you say that you must stay, predators have found a playground where they can stay and be sadistic and get the backing of people in authority and be convinced by people that they have the backing of God. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't, but that's what's portrayed and you've seen it. And that's one of the things that when people came out of the woodworks because of that video is it's like, finally somebody's saying, that video started out with, I think I remember teaching about the woman caught in adultery.
Yes.
And what a profound moment that Jesus protected her in that moment. Not the men, not the guys with the stones, not the accusers, and by the way, the man that she was with, as far as we know, he was nowhere in the circle.
Yeah.
But he created a protective circle around her with both his words and his presence and sent everybody else fleeing. And in that moment, you see how God really feels about the abused person.
Right.
The oppressed person finds safety and protection. The oppressors are sent fleeing in the presence of the actual God.
Yes.
But it's that religious culture that says, protect marriage at all costs. Well, if that's the case, then people who are willing to make others pay all costs will come running.
Yes. Yes. So true. So good. It's profound. And because I personally wanted to do right and do good, and I did. Um, I was so afraid that I was sharing with Joe earlier. I was like, I actually in my head had this fear of I'm not going to make it to heaven if I don't if I'm not all in. It's just like crazy, just crazy things. I really thought inside, and so he filed for divorce with me. I was going to stay to the end, but I did have boundaries, and that's what shifted that. Is that there were boundaries in place, and so
Good.
all that being said, one of the things that when you started to break down God's heart about the covenant and really what it looks like to break covenant, that was a powerful, profound aha for me, because I was looking for, well, covenant means X, Y, and Z. But the way that you described someone breaking covenant biblically,
Yeah.
that for me was a moment that I was set free.
Yeah. If it's about two becoming one, a narcissist cannot become one with anybody. They're so enamored with themselves. Part of two become one means you've got enough ability to attach and enough ability to value each other. Two people becoming one means I value you, you value me, and then we act that out for the rest of our lives. A narcissist doesn't have that capacity. They only value themselves, and if they're portraying their value for somebody else, it's only because it benefits them.
Yeah.
And so it's almost impossible for them to enter a covenant, much less maintain one.
Yeah, powerful. Another thing that I am so grateful that you guys, this was another big thing for me, is the misassigned responsibility.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody else say that. But I believe that's a really big subject, and very much prevalent.
Yeah.
It's so prevalent. It's prevalent in family origin. It's certainly prevalent in the church. We're seeing this kind of on blast,
Yeah. If we back up, I hadn't really thought this in that context, but one of the things that we teach in our freedom series is that the very basis of freedom is understanding what God is responsible for and understanding what we're responsible for. And when we reverse those things, we try to take responsibility for God's part and we ask him to take responsibility for our part. Everything falls apart. So, let's just take the new birth, right? In the new birth, our part is to surrender and yield to him. His part is to do the saving. And yet what we want to do is we want to say, I'll do this. I've prayed the prayer. Now I'm going to live this thing out. And he's going, what Galatians 3, that you live it out the same way you received it. Your job is just to yield. It's his job to complete it. And so even at the very beginning of freedom, it's about finding correctly assigned responsibility. But the other piece of that, because we've taught this since that video, so we've got years of kind of digging into that and learning. That for me was the initial kind of aha. Oh, it's not about the behavior, the words, it's literally about who's carrying the weight.
Yes.
Who's carrying the responsibility for the communication, the resolution, the healing process, who's expecting the other person to carry the weight.
Yeah.
And one of the things I realized is that responsibility is the core of emotional, relational, and spiritual health, or as I describe it now, that move from dependence to independence. That's even psychologically, the foundation of all mental, emotional, spiritual, and relational health. Independence says, I'm responsible for me. Yeah. You're responsible for you. Okay. And when that gets mixed up, the foundation of all health is eroded at the very foundation.
Powerful. That is so powerful. And I think that there's so many people that I know, because of course what you walk through, you tend to have people. I have pastors send me women that are waking up to the fact that they're in an abusive marriage, and I send so many people I can't even tell you how many times I have sent the link. The link. Here's
You're
the
the
link.
one. Okay.
Yeah.
You're the one.
Well, I
Go
can
watch this, go watch
guarantee,
this. Yeah.
I can guarantee that everyone that has been, set free, encountered God in and through these teachings, and because they've lived it, and they're finally finding the language. They're finally okay, that's it. That's what I've been feeling, but I couldn't articulate. And I bet they're sharing this left and right, because what you walk through, you just can't help but want to see others free from. And
Right.
that being said, I know that you both have your own stories of encountering God in this way and being set free and
Yeah.
being healed from some of your own, trauma and stories.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah. There's things we'll share. There's things we won't share for a couple different
Yeah.
reasons, but let's, I'll say this. I didn't learn that by observing clinically other people's abuse circumstances.
Yeah.
I, in 2015, left an abusive marriage, and under the guidance of a nationally known marriage counselor and under oversight of the elders of my church, I separated and then eventually left with the blessing of that nationally known minister. Elders were kind of divided over it, and so I can't. That's all I can say about that. But I would look back at it and say, I tell people I had 6 or 7 counselors tell me I was being abused, and I would go, "No, I'm not. You guys just don't understand."
Yes.
I look back at it now and I think, I'm telling 6 different counselors, they just don't understand my
And
circumstances.
the hard thing is that you are a professional counselor.
Yeah,
It's like, of course I would know. Of course,
Right.
like if that was happening to me, I would know that.
And I'm a professional counselor, and I'm inhabited by the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
and I've made a living being like wise. Like I teach people how to use their brain in a different way and to recognize patterns, and like this is something that both in the natural and in the supernatural I should have recognized. And I was just telling them, no, you're wrong, you're missing it. And it was honestly, it was the book The Betrayal Bond, that I thought a counselor was giving it to me so that I could understand my partner's issues.
Right.
Chapter 1, I realized my counselor was giving it to me so I could recognize me. And that's when the scales started to come off.
Yeah.
That's when I started to recognize, okay. And so the journey from there was both to get out and get safe, but also to understand how did I not see? How on earth did I not see? I honestly, in that teaching, I talk about the victim believing they're a special helper, and I just wanted to help.
Yes.
Should have had all the tools and all the skills and all the backing, and should have had everything needed to be that special helper.
Yes.
And so when I finally began to see and just make the initial steps to assign responsibility correctly, everything fell apart and everything started to get better at the same time.
Yeah.
That is, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that.
It's one of those things when people come to me at this point and say, my divorce is final, I say, congratulations and I'm sorry.
Right.
Yes.
It's one of the most powerful steps
thing.
of freedom, and it's one of the most tragic moments that I have yet to meet somebody who leaves an abusive marriage because they wanted to not be married.
That's so true.
They leave because that's the only way they know to be safe.
Yes.
And would do anything to have stayed married.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And in fact, had done
everything.
Yes.
To their own like physical illness, to their own, emotional stability, to their own spiritual health, paying those kinds of prices to do anything to stay married.
Yes. Yes. So powerful. I think that many that will be listening or have are listening now can relate to that if they've gone through the divorce piece. And I've thought of it like a puzzle. You have a puzzle piece that's really, it's not supposed to be, this puzzle's not supposed to be put together this way. But somehow we've managed to fit it in and make it work and try harder. Um, and when those puzzle pieces start to fly in the air, it feels like, I remember feeling like the deepest grief. I didn't even imagine it would be as deep as it was, because I'm sure many can relate to this, that it's not just the loss of the marriage, but often it's a loss of many friends.
Yeah.
And
in the church, your church and your almost in family, and it's an ache and it's a loss, and it's, you know, it's something that it's like when we talk with people to help them understand, like, sadly, the carnage that comes from this is devastating.
yes.
And you get yourself back in a way that you never knew you would be able to have yourself back again.
Yeah.
It's so
And
true.
that process is like being raked across coals, and trying to survive in it. And then you finally get outside of it and you're like, okay, hold on. The air smells a little bit cleaner and it's a
Yes.
little bit brighter, you know, but that process is a very wicked one, but so is staying in the pain. So is staying in the midst of it, being somebody like you have to tamp yourself down so much to perform in that situation. It's devastating. And then you finally get out, it's like, I don't have to do that anymore. And then figuring out who you are outside of that is a whole nother journey. But
Yeah, which is an important part of the journey.
yeah, which is a very important part of the journey.
We tell people, you know, the most important thing I think you need to know in the healing process is remember who you were. And if you never knew,
right,
discover it for the first time. It's because it's not just about sewing up the injuries and letting the bruises heal. It's about the opportunity to finally actually take responsibility rightly for your own journey, which is where you start to become yourself.
Yes.
You know, you talked about it like the puzzle pieces. I want to back up for a second and say, I described it like I thought I was building a town. And one day I looked behind the front walls and realized it was just a movie set.
Oh,
and
wow.
so you walk down Main Street and you think there's a general store and there's a little saloon and there's there's all these shops and hotels. And then all of a sudden one day you look and it's like a bunch of this wasn't real.
Yeah.
And if the truth sets us free, discovering what's real and what's not real is a major step in that direction.
Yeah.
Devastating. Like both of you have said, it's devastating to look and go, this was a movie set. Like this wasn't what I thought. I didn't build what I thought I built with my life. And I didn't, in a relationship, I didn't like invest in, I didn't invest in something that has any sustaining power at all. Mm-hmm. And yet you wake up and you go, okay, so if what's left is 10% of what was there.
Yeah. Are we good?
We can't
hear you. We've lost audio. Let's see here.
Oh, comments.
Oh, there's lots of comments. Fun. Have you lost our audio?
I'm going to see if I can.
Uh-oh. Yeah, we can't hear you. She said, I can hear this. Dina, you can hear both of us? I can't hear Suzanne, but I can hear Polly. I just moved over to the chat comments. I was in private comments, so this is great.
So the people listening can hear us, but not Suzanne.
Oh no. Are you on a Bluetooth somewhere?
So.
Well, I'm going to say something if you're okay while you figure out the audio.
Yeah, I just texted her, so go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things you mentioned is like, finding out who you were before all of it. And it was something that I didn't know who I really was because I grew up, and I can't remember if Suzanne and I talked about if we were talking about family of origin before we got on or during, but one of the things is that family of origin, I grew up in abuse. And so abuse was my lens throughout my whole entire life.
Starting at like age 3.
Yeah. And I'm sure before that, the earliest memories were age 3, and it was sexual abuse and neglect. And at age 8, it stopped, that level of abuse, when my mom finally left my father, because he was one of my main abusers. And after that, just then I became my own abuser, very promiscuous, doing all the things that put me in positions to be abused.
Can I pause you right there?
Absolutely.
That's such an important point. Like, that is such an important point. And if you guys, by the way, want to text questions to us, if we don't get sound back, you can do that. We've got phone numbers. But what she just said is so important. And I'm going to say it again, and then I'm going to give it the context we're in, and then tag you right back.
Please.
When all you know is abuse and the responsibility of the abuser is transferred over to you, there's some substantive experiences that you take on that aren't really yours.
Yeah.
Like when you become your own abuser, like Polly described, it becomes promiscuous in ways that are risky and dangerous.
Put me in
it's
dangerous
taking on the
situations.
belief of the abuser about you.
Mm-hmm.
And so she carries this belief of you're only good for sex. Your only value is sexuality. You control life through sexual. And so that's the belief of the abuser. They don't just transfer responsibility. They transfer their weight, their belief system. So the same thing happens in relational abuse and narcissistic abuse. Is when people try to get out, they often have kind of that internal accuser
Mm-hmm.
that's taking on the belief system of the abuser about them. And part of discovering yourself, I know you're headed here, but I thought it was important to
please. Yeah.
Part of what's so crucial about that is to say that voice isn't you.
Right.
And in some cases, it's not even the devil.
Mm-mm.
It is your abuser echoing around inside your head, having convinced you, because that exchange of plus and minuses is substantive. It's real stuff. And you take on the deficit of the abuser, you also take on the belief system that says you're of no value.
Right.
And so beginning to kick that voice out at the same time you're starting to discover yourself is so crucial.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just keep going.
No, that's so good, because it's so important to capture that, because it's then it's the formation, especially, the abuse starts pre-verbal, and you start having this full belief system of who you think you are. There you are.
There's your sound.
Thank God. Okay. So sorry. But, beautifully done. Carry on. I'm tracking right with you.
Sweet.
Joe must have gone and fixed it, by the way.
Did Joe get it? Or he was like, we got to get this. Yeah.
That's why he's with us tonight, among other reasons.
Of course.
Yes.
But just the whole family of origin and the being raised in the abusive system, and then just falling in line with that and thinking like, okay, well, this is who I am. This is what I'm attracted to. The attraction stuff we're just starting to do some teaching on that. That has been incredibly important in our marriage.
Yeah.
In the attraction science stuff. Attachment. Thank you. Attachment science stuff. The anxious and avoidant and all that, just kind of the formations of those things. But really, going back to what Bob said, is like, some of us don't know who we are even before it started happening. And so you have your story kind of knowing, like, I know who I was.
Yeah, I was pretty
grounded, and
I had all of our families aren't perfect, but I had some helpful things and some unhelpful things. But then I had years of really healthy discipleship and some healthy stuff that I did get from my family. And so I had a pretty solid foundation before I found myself in the whirlwind.
Yeah.
But Polly, like she's saying, it was her whole life was whirlwind to whirlwind to whirlwind.
And that compartmentalization, that survival, is like, how do I do this? I go from being this wild and crazy woman then to getting pregnant and marrying him and then having twins, becoming a stay-at-home mother. And it's like, now I try to fit myself into this world.
Talk about a puzzle piece, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, oh, and now we're going to be a Christian. And I came to know I was atheist. And till my girls were 3 years old, I came to know the Lord in 99. And it's like, oh, yay, God. Okay. And then just go about life. And then moved back to this, to the Dallas Fort Worth area and started going to church. And that's where I built my church home and family and raised the kids in it and all that kind of stuff. And then my world fell apart. And everything that you think is real, you find out it isn't.
Yes.
And it's devastating. Like,
Yes.
rock your world, devastating. And it was one of those ones like, I'm not sure if I'm going to get back up from this one.
Yes.
Like, you know, it's like I'm strong and I've made it through heck and back. And I don't know what your audience and what words I can use, but so just saying it. Hell's scriptural, but I went through hell and back. And this one, I remember just crying and sounds coming out of me that I never heard. I'm like, I did not know I could make those sounds. I did not know that pain and ache was so deep inside of me. And then it's like, and then you just take a deep breath and you go through the motions and you figure it out and then get to navigate. I think one of the things that has been really important in the healing journey, because I've done pockets of counseling and healing with, you know, with counselors, but also just sitting with the Lord, where he takes the shattered pieces and he makes you whole. He makes you new. And then finally, I remember one of my counselors saying, you can't fully heal if you're not safe.
Yes.
Well, your brainstem, your
exclamation mark, underline, bold face, italics.
Your nervous system will always be firing and on alert, and you cannot fully heal when you're in that state. And so it's getting on the outside of it and then letting your nervous system just breathe for a bit and brainstem, and then having a safe place in a marriage, but then learning how to feel safe in it and trust is like, because I was raised not to trust. And so it's been such a really beautiful journey and a great place of like feeling safe. And so,
she's got a friend, Gina Berkmeyer, who's also a licensed counselor, who describes what she calls emotionally corrective experiences.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Great terminology.
One thing to read about it or watch a really amazing podcast about it. It's another thing to have a relationship and daily experiences where things are different.
Yes.
And you can,
you got yours.
Yes.
So,
at times I've been like, are we okay? Because you're so calm and even still.
I'm not always aware that I'm apparently doing the right thing.
Good job, Joe.
It's nice that you don't have to think about it so hard.
Yeah. When you're used to chaos, Polly, what you were sharing is that when you're used to chaos, I've had to ask myself, well, why did that feel like home?
Yeah.
Why did I not see that?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of undoing, isn't there? And being in a very healthy, like he's the same, he's constantly even kill and it's been so healing.
Yeah.
And also a learning curve.
Yes.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time learning.
Yeah, we've definitely done our learning.
Early on, we made the mistake. No, it's not a mistake.
No, it's not a mistake.
It's
learning.
We shot a video course called what it was, a communication or handling relationships in trauma or something like that.
Yeah. It was about communicating.
How to deal with each other in a relationship when there's trauma in the background, in the past. And man, we taught this really amazing course, and then we really started to learn.
Yeah. It's like God's like, no. You
Like,
guys, no.
every now and then we'd kind of put our head above the water and go, we need to just take that course
Maybe
down.
we should just not have that.
We knew nothing. We knew nothing. We're learning
We knew educational stuff.
we are graduate students now.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, we
it's
definitely
real.
need to reshoot it. We definitely need to reshoot
Or at least some follow-up.
it. Yeah,
you know.
sure.
That's so good. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Emily is saying it's like getting off a roller coaster and having to adjust.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's getting your sea legs. It's like you've been on a boat and you've been tossed, and then you get off the boat and you're like, hold on, everything's still moving. Or roller skate legs.
Yeah.
Yes.
In one of our conferences, I started the conference with a parable.
Mhm.
I'm not going to tell the whole parable because my parables tend to be long and extensive. But the short version of it is once was a woman who loved to hike and just loved the outdoors. Have you heard it? You're nodding like you've heard it.
No, I'm just I'm a
That encourages.
preacher's daughter, an evangelist's daughter. So
Gotcha.
whoever's speaking, you let them know you're with them.
I'm nodding and smiling. I love
see
that.
hand.
Yeah.
I see that hand.
Yeah, that's so good.
Where's my
So
white handkerchief? Out there.
That's right.
the story is about a young woman who just loved hiking, loved the outdoors, loved the seashore and the mountains, and just would go hiking anywhere and everywhere. And one day along the trail, she ran into a man who pushed her into a pit. And she had stopped to help him because he seemed to be in trouble. And when she was trying to help him, he pushed her into the pit.
Mhm.
And she literally goes down, 20, 30 feet into this hole and, bruises herself and knocks herself out. When she wakes up, he's up there taunting her. And she's not sure she can even get out of the pit. But finally, she thinks he's gone. And, painful move after painful move, she finally climbs up out of the pit, not sure if he might still be up there hiding somewhere. And when she gets to the top, she's just in fear that he might still be around. And so she goes and hides behind the tree with her backpack. There's some other people coming down the path, and her first response is maybe they're dangerous too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she stays hidden behind the tree, and all by herself, she limps 3 miles down to her car and gets herself all by herself home with her backpack in her car. And she begins to study the kind of people that are dangerous in the wilderness. And she begins to study how to get out of a pit when you're injured. And she begins to study, how to do first aid in the wilderness, and all the survival things that she wished she'd had. She becomes this intensely focused student of all the survival stuff. And she becomes, an expert in human behavior, and she learns all about, recognizing dangerous people over safe people. And she becomes kind of this expert in reading people's body language, and, years and years of study to keep herself safe. She wakes up one day and says, I used to love hiking.
Yes.
Yeah.
I used to like to be outside. I think I'm just going to do that.
Yes.
And she, even though it's a short hike and she doesn't go anywhere too far out, she gets outside and she gets out in some transcendent beauty. That was one of my counselors kept saying, be as close as you can to transcendent beauty as often as you can.
Yes.
She finally gets outside and she's in this place. And bit by bit, she becomes the woman who loves hiking again. But, there's those phases to the healing process.
Yeah.
And the first one is you got to get out of the freaking pit.
Yes.
And then you have to figure out some people on the path aren't safe.
That's right.
Yes.
Some people are, but you got to figure that stuff out.
Yes.
And then it helps to learn about narcissism, and it helps to learn about abuse, and it helps to really helps to read all the books and get some validation. But at some point, we've got to stop being the person who was abused.
Yes.
And start being the person who was created.
Yes.
Start being the person that we're redeemed to be in, and go back to being that person. In Polly's case, I'd love for you to talk more about that, because your journey to discover that has been a healing thing in itself. I'm a launch if you
please.
So she talked about, not really having known who she was for all those years. And finally, probably 3 years ago, through EMDR, And, we're 7 years into our marriage. So 4 years into the marriage, and she, like, some stuff clicks.
Yeah.
And I'll say what you've been saying and then kind of let you say what
Yeah.
you have
So
to
I
say.
know what you're thinking.
And she says, so I've lived, like, trauma has been my fuel.
Yeah.
And abuse has been the thing that made me do all the things. It's why I wrote what I wrote. It's why I painted what I painted. It's why I did the ministries that I did. And all of a sudden, I have a blank slate and I don't know what to paint.
Yes.
It's been a really fascinating part of the journey, because I counsel lots of people, and I always wanted to believe that you could actually live a life trigger free. Like, doesn't mean you're not gonna have things that, like, because that's God created us to be alert to specific things that happen. But it's what you do with those triggers. And it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, 3 years ago, like this season.
Yeah, I was
March and April.
I'm on a panel for a lovely ministry called Sower Seeds, but we do a thing called Evening of Hope, and it's a big fundraiser for trafficked women. And the founders, Dwayne and Leslie, pulled me aside and said, like, you need to watch this video because there's a scene in it that's very similar to a description of what you wrote about in your book.
It's a fundraiser event. So they put on the screen in front of 500 people,
usually a 15-minute
kind of showing what
movie.
These women have come out of.
Yeah.
And it's got a scene that's very similar to her scene from her book that she describes her abuse.
Yeah. And they're like, we just really want you to watch this first, just so we do a preview of the movie before the night. And I said, great. And I sat there and watched it, and I might cry, not because I'm triggered, but I sat there and watched it.
Because you're not.
Because I'm not. And for the first time, I'm like, I'm okay. Like, I can watch this, and I'm devastated for the girls that go through this. And I'm so sad that I had to go through this. And I'm not shut down. And it was, I think, one of the first. I called Bob. I'm like, oh my gosh. It was one of the first real moments that I'm like, I'm actually going to be okay. And I wanted to believe it, and I would believe it for everybody else. And I teach it and speak it and write it and do all these things. And these last 3 years have been really interesting because trauma is no longer my lens.
Wow.
The healing is my lens.
That she's not exaggerating. She's not making that up. It's things that I had learned to know were triggers for her, and to, be cautious and careful and wise around them. They come up and they happen. Yeah. And she looks and goes, I'm good.
Yeah. Or can we talk about that? I'm a little, like, that kind of freaked me out a little bit, but I'm actually able to talk about it, because before my past, I would, like,
freeze,
go inside and be, I would shut down. And so I want to say that just to encourage everybody to know that it is possible. Like, it is a real thing. And I again, it's that thing, you want to believe it. It's like, you want to know that is true. And it is possible. And
I want to back up and
oh, that's powerful.
Suzanne, you had said something so important to come back around and address that, I'm just going to say, both of us in our journey, we've been, like I said, we've been married 7 years. Both of us in our journey have duked it out with God on more than one occasion.
Oh, you thumbed.
Wonder if we get balloons. Sometimes we get balloons. Both of us have duked it out with God on some occasions where it's just like, all right, we're going to sit down. We are going to have it out, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you said something earlier that I want to repeat and give some foundation to, and that is, he's not mad at us.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's not disappointed. He's not frustrated. He's not thinking, well, they screwed everything up. I'll bail them out one more time. When you think about this, think about a father, and a good, healthy father who would look and go, if my kid was so trapped inside by the thing they had been through, how could I, be angry at them for living out the pain of that trauma? But his goal is to bring us out of that trauma and into a place of giving us back what's always been ours, but has been stolen from us by trauma.
Mhm.
And this fear that people have because it's so put into us by both religious abusers
Mhm.
and by
Yes.
often abusive or religious systems that insist that,
Yes.
for instance, I'm going to hit this one square, that they insist that God hates divorce because that's the translation they've read.
Yes.
And there
Yes.
are multiple translations where Malachi reads God hates divorce, but the New International Version actually has it more accurately when it
Mm.
says God is bothered when the man hates his woman so much. I'm not quoting it directly, but they actually assign the word hatred to what the Hebrew says in the original, and that is, it doesn't say God hates divorce. It says God hates, or God is against the man who hates his wife. And it's only been Gretchen Baskerville, our friend and fellow advocate, really says this better and knows this better than I do. But if I remember right, it really didn't read God hates divorce until about the 1500s.
Wow.
And it was starting with King James and many of those translations followed, where that Malachi chapter really got distorted to say something other than God is bothered by the man who hates his wife and divorces her.
Yeah.
Now, there are so many different places where there's mistranslation and misunderstanding of what the scriptures say about divorce. We could actually do an entire, show on that.
Or go read her book.
Go read
Yeah.
Gretchen's book and watch Gretchen's.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Gretchen
Yeah.
did a conference with us one time and did an incredible session called God's Protection of Women in the Bible.
Mhm.
And it was
Mm.
addressing those passages where it's misunderstood it's misunderstood because of mistranslation.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
the bottom line is this: God wants us safe because he created and redeemed us to become the person he designed us to be in the beginning. And abuse takes away every bit of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
His goal, the cross and the resurrection, was to give us the fullness of life that he created us for. And that doesn't happen under the thumb of oppression.
Yes. Yes.
And so, when Polly talks about finally getting to this place of freedom, it's like then many have been through that secondary abuse or that secondary trauma of their
Yes.
religious communities have also turned on them. Their families have also turned on them.
Mhm.
At some
Yes.
point, you take stock, like we've said, and you look and you go, okay, I have what I have, and I don't have what I thought I had.
Yes.
But I am going to
Mhm.
become me.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, you go, whatever that is.
I'm still
Whatever
figuring
that is.
Right. Yeah.
I can so relate to Polly, you sharing that. And I'm sure many can relate to that of actually waking up to, wait a second, what is that movie, The Runaway Bride? How do I like my eggs?
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't know how I liked my eggs because I at one point I started to learn that along the way that in order for people to be okay with me, I needed to be what everybody else needed from me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think I accidentally learned that very young. Like people will like me and they'll be happy with me if I be whatever they want me to be.
Mhm.
And that I so appreciate you sharing that, Polly, of
Mm.
the hope that you just released, that you're not triggered
Yeah.
and that you're learning like what Polly likes
Mhm.
and who God made you to be. That is such a powerful message.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll
Thankful.
tell you, one of the things that's really helped her get trigger free, and someone in the comments
I wanna
mentioned
talk about it, yeah.
EMDR,
Yeah.
and it's been incredibly helpful to both of us.
Yes. And I want to say about EMDR because one of the things and also I use NLP for a neuro-linguistic programming to really help like disconnect the power of the traumatic event from the expression of it. So anxiety, panic, things like that. But one of the things EMDR was really incredibly helpful for me is in my practitioner, my counselor was not a Christian. And so she's an artist. And I think there's something really important because in the Christian world, we can get so locked in on, I have to have a Christian counselor. And there are places your counselor like my counselor respects and honors what I believe, and she will not violate that. And she is an amazing, an amazing practitioner at what she does. And so, if you've tried EMDR, it takes time. Like I would go every other week, and then I would take a couple of months off because I'm like, oh my gosh. And then it's like, just trying to figure out like who I am outside of all of that and I'm still learning that. And it's been fun. And sometimes it's a little frustrating. I'm like, okay, what is this? And but I just want to encourage you, if you have done EMDR, I've seen some people talk about it, but if you have done it, and find somebody that is an artist in it, that has probably been doing it for a while or has been referred, and somebody that they don't have to be Christian.
Yes.
Because they can just, are all your doctors Christian? Like if you have a good physician, it's like you just really want a good surgeon, and the Lord is in you.
Yes.
So it's like it is, but it's the same kind of thing. Were you going to say something?
Let's talk about counseling a little bit.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yes, please do.
Please.
I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, have been for 30 years. 31, something like that. For 3 decades. And one of the most harmful things that you'll find in the counseling world, especially relative to abuse, divorce, and remarriage, is there's a whole school of biblical counselors, and that's the title, biblical counseling. I'm not saying all do, but in both the last time I looked, both the International and the American Association of Biblical Counseling, it was in their theoretical underpinnings that their job is to find the sin of their client so that they can address the client's sin. Regardless of what their presenting issue is, they search for their client's sin because they believe it's their job to biblically confront sin. Incredibly.
Joe is rolling his eyes. I don't know if you saw
Incredibly harmful.
Yeah.
Incredibly harmful in the case of abuse, in a number of cases, but especially in the case of abuse and trauma, because the last thing, especially if it's religious trauma or religious abuse, the last thing anybody needs in that situation is confrontation about their sin. What they need is healing. Imagine Jesus looking at the woman caught in adultery and saying, I'm here to talk to you about your sin. Not only did not start there, he really didn't say anything about it till she was headed down the path.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation in its own. But the reality is the healing journey there's a difference between talking to somebody about their struggle or their sin versus sitting with somebody and helping them heal. And they are seldom the same thing. And so what I would say is that, Polly mentioned the artistry of her counselor. We often say that therapy is both a science and an art. There's a number of theory bases that therapists use, and there's a wide range of them. But one of the things I want to say very quickly is that there's a term in scripture called counsel that is not the therapy that's done in counseling offices today. In scripture, the word counsel means to give advice. And in the world, kind of the world I was trained in and the world I operate in, licensed counselors giving advice is the last thing we do. Sometimes it happens, but we have training in a number of different things involving the central nervous system and brain function and systemic issues that come from generations and the ways to break those patterns and all these. I mean, the list of evidence-based practices that we have that have nothing to do with advice is endless. And so when people mix those two and say, we've got the Bible, we can give all the counsel that anyone will ever need. If advice is what they need, that may or may not be true. But if therapy, EMDR, NLP, all the different techniques that have come out these days with a variety of different forms of tapping techniques that are all made to regulate the nervous system in some specific ways. Those things, you're not going to find those in the scripture any more than you're going to learn how to engineer and build a bridge in the scripture. It's just not there. And so there's a mix up when we read the word counsel in the Bible and we think it applies to counseling. actually prefer the word therapy because of that mix up. So when people have the title biblical counselor, I know a few that I think are good guys that really don't focus on the sin of others, and they have some evidence-based practices. And there's a whole school of biblical counselors that won't listen to any of what's been learned in the psychological world, regardless of how research-based it is. But there are some who can look at the what's being done in research and what's being done in the modern psychological development, and they can look at that and learn and gain from that. And it's so crucial in finding help.
Yes.
That you find somebody who's not going to pile on the misassignment of responsibility.
Yes.
And tertiary trauma. If you got trauma from your abuse, secondary trauma from your religious organization, and tertiary trauma from your counselor, you might give up on any help whatsoever.
Yes. And I just want to say that is a big part of my story.
Okay.
I found myself, the woman going, who's safe?
Right.
Who's safe? Because there was this pile on. Well, yes, and I don't mean this, I'm not trying to talk badly about, but, there was this sense of, okay, yes, he was abusive. Yes, he shouldn't have been stalking this person, and he shouldn't have probably hid recording devices all over the house, and he probably shouldn't have, these things, there was a time he recorded conversations and sent them to the ministry we were a part of to tell them, look, she is standing up against my authority. She needs to be pulled from leading worship. And it was just like this crazy, but then there was this, also this, yes, but what is your part?
Yeah.
And because I wanted to do well, I was like, well, yeah, what is my part? And some of these things pushed me into like inner healing, but that backfired because I started recognizing that, hey, you need boundaries. Like, but this load, this weight of you need to do better, be better, try harder, love harder.
Very hard.
Making you responsible for the resolution of somebody else's problem. Assigning responsibility to you.
Yeah. One of the things I say is, I love you so much, I'm not going to let you treat me this way anymore. So I'm going to put boundaries in place, and then you're responsible for yourself. Therefore, I'm not going to let you harm me anymore. I'm so nice.
You are so nice. I think Brene Brown was someone that shared, I heard the quote or heard her say that now that, have boundaries in place, I'm less likable, but a lot more loving.
Yes.
And boy, I felt that as I healed.
That's
I was
what people
like,
don't understand is how loving boundaries are.
Yeah. It's like, we're not going to let our child run out in the street. It's like, I love you. Have fun. Go figure it out. Just run out in that street, you cute little 2-year-old. It's like, no, I love you so much. I'm not going to let you do that. And I'm going to set boundaries for the health of you and me, and learn that. And there's so many teachings that are like, nope, you can't have boundaries. Otherwise, you are a bad wife, a bad husband, and you have to, anyway, I'm not going to get out to that.
There's a question that I want to address. Somebody asked, what kind of therapy should I get if I've gotten out of a narcissistic abuse situation? I want to address that for just a moment.
Please.
Because it's really difficult to find somebody who can really help on all the fronts. There's a giant movement today for people to become trauma informed. And trauma informed means I understand the concept of trauma, the impact on the nervous system, and have been equipped in some ways to help heal from trauma. But here's the thing: trauma informed isn't the same as abuse informed.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So good.
So I've seen a ton of counselors who have learned enough about trauma to be considered trauma informed, but still put the weight of responsibility on the abused partner. And so even more than a model of therapy, it's crucial to have your therapist have some understanding of this issue of responsibility. I've literally had some people give their therapist that video that we talked about initially
Yes.
and say, please watch this. If you disagree with it, I'm not going to come back.
Or let me know what you think.
Well, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. and those are questions to ask. Tell me what your understanding of abuse is. What is your what's the word I'm
Stance on divorce.
What is your stance on divorce? What is your like if this thing is let me give you a scenario. If this thing is happening, how would you help me navigate it?
Yeah.
And
That's
ask
good.
those questions up front. One of the things I want everybody to remember is that your counselor works for you.
Yes.
You are hiring them to work for you. Like your lawn people, you hire them to mow your yard and do your flower beds. Like they are working for you. So you get to ask those questions. Yes, they may have lots of information, lots of training, lots of alphabets behind their name.
You're paying their
You're
salary.
paying their salary. So please ask those questions. They're going to ask you a lot of questions because they want to get to know you. But please ask those questions up front. It's and it's a really beautiful way if you're coming out of abuse and you're learning how to become who you're created to be. When you start asking those questions, you actually start getting your voice back.
Yeah.
Because it's just a multiple. Did I say that right? Yeah. Multiple layered effect for you is like, okay, I'm going to ask these questions. I am going to do this kind of counseling, but I'm going to get to know them so I can get the best benefit out of it. And they as well, because if we don't agree, then
I won't be safe.
Yeah.
and
I won't be
can't heal.
safe. And exactly.
Yeah.
That is so good. That is so good. Do you have anything to?
I've just been absorbing. I feel like I've had a little bit of an abuse past, but not like Suzanne in any way. I've always kind of observed it from afar, and I feel like where I've experienced it the most and seen it, and then sometimes years later I realized, well, yeah, I was seeing something correctly.
Yeah.
It's in a church setting.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of that's because I've gone to church since I was before I had memory, so
Yeah.
that's partially why. But in that, it wasn't until I was in my early 20s, probably mid 20s, that I started to recognize it, because I was so used to the system, the institutional system, whatever. Sorry, not a screen. Whatever. Again, I'm kind of a church mutt. Like my dad's Catholic, my mom was Baptist.
It's cute.
Then there's charismatic, and then I was an Anglican. There's lots of church history in my background.
We're all mutts over here.
I love that. I've never heard that term. That I'm adopting that. Thank you.
We worship in a barn in our backyard.
Yeah, now I'm just
Perfect.
Yeah, now I'm some kind of like weird monk or something.
But the important thing is you're a guitar player.
That's what he loved about you.
That probably kept me sane. That was probably my therapy from like my teenage and 20s was that.
Yeah.
And that's probably what kept me in that church environment.
Yeah.
But even with that, there was a church I was a part of where I realized I was playing at this church. Now I enjoyed it. I was single, whatever. I could do whatever I wanted at that time with my time. But I had played guitar at the church more than the actual worship leader. Like they tallied up our weeks, and I realized I was giving all my time and energy to this church. And this was one of the first places I really started to see some abusive patterns within the leadership. And I'm not going to, say any names, but like,
Sure.
It's one of those things. The Lord led me out of it through some like wild charismatic experience and brought me like kind of all to His own in a way.
And later on, that pastor.
Later on, like that pastor, I found him in one of those Roy's reports. So it was Julie Roy's reports.
Yeah.
Not from our church in Kentucky, but from another church he started. And I'm just like, how did I know that? Like it's like you had this sense within me, but I was like, nah, I'm probably, I probably just have some gripe against the guy or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then
You didn't trust his.
there was this,
you see how easy it is to put the responsibility on yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from naivety. It comes from goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good people say, I should check myself before I check other people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
abusive people, predators, take full advantage of that. Yeah, you should check yourself, dude.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
It's-
they want you to check yourself because that keeps you from checking them.
Yeah.
That's
Say
powerful.
law.
Yeah. And I know some people are just, and I understand, like right now we're seeing the church really be exposed and confronted. And I know for some people it feels devastating, and I really appreciate that. But I have felt hope.
Mhm.
And I have felt like, God, you are exposing the darkness within the church because you love the church, because you love people, because you care. And
Cares about his image.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
His
so
image
I'll tell
is-
you,
I love that.
here's my theory. I'm trying to think where's the last time I said this, but it doesn't matter. People have prayed and prayed and prayed for a giant revival to come.
It's just here.
This is it.
This is it.
This is
Yeah,
it.
it's already happening.
And what I mean by that is, the deconstruction movement that everyone is so opposed to
Yes.
is actually people finding God separate of the layers of institutionality.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so obviously those who make their living from the layers of institutionality can't allow themselves to see that as revival.
Yeah.
They can't. Otherwise, it becomes very, it bounces back on them in a way they don't know how to self-examine.
Yeah.
But if
Come
you've
on.
got literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people finding God on their own,
Yeah.
I would call that a great revival.
You're speaking his
Yeah,
language.
you just said, like, I read I'm just like
so
a
good.
research whatever. I'll scroll through people's, if I read an article, I want to scroll the comments and see people's thoughts. And I read something about, because I've experienced my own sort of deconstruction for the last
And that's
8
almost,
years of my life.
it's
And
almost been a bad word. I feel like there's
Yeah.
even people that I love that are my friends. We have so many friends that are pastors that are amazing pastors,
Mhm.
and carry the love of the Father and care for people. And
yeah,
but I know there's some people that will hear that word and they're going to tune off. They're going to
Right.
Well, they
some
think
leaders-
deconstruction means not loving God.
That's right.
well, I do construction for work, so I know deconstruction is the first step to fixing something,
Yeah. Oh, that's
to
good.
making it better.
Analogy.
Yeah.
So, like when I first saw the thing, I'm like, yeah, that's what's happening to me. Like, because all the little building blocks that I had learned throughout my life and like the world of like Protestant Christianity for the most part,
Mhm.
it started to crumble, and and it was the Holy Spirit that was just
Yeah.
Protestant
like
Christianity.
there was a season of my life where I felt like every week I was like in some new space of healing. Like I didn't even know what was going on.
Protestant
Yeah.
Now I think it's
Christianity.
normal. I've normalized myself to it or something.
Protestant
But-
Christianity was based on a giant deconstruction.
Yeah.
We called it the Reformation, right? We called it the
Yes.
Reformation,
Yeah.
but it was just a deconstruction of the present institutions.
Yeah.
And out of that, we have the whole, protesting church, which we call Protestant Christianity. And so you've got a bunch of people protesting right now,
Yeah.
and something's not right. A bunch of people going, "Yeah, you ain't right." It's like, okay, I don't want to have that conversation anymore, but something ain't right.
Yeah.
Something's not right.
Mhm.
We had our friend Zach Muirkrebs, he was the guy who preached the sermon where the Asbury revival broke out from.
Okay.
And he shared, I don't know, in December for beholding him. But the reason I'm saying this is that, he talked about, all that broke out. He said, he says this, he said, I gave a subpar message.
She did.
He said, I texted my wife and said, hey, I laid a stinker. I'll be home for lunch. And then a couple people lingered, but he said, really what it was like a revival of humility. Humility. And I think in a world where hero worship has become like the thing,
Yeah.
it's like we put people and we let them tell us how to think, and we don't even look and ask
We
Holy
ask for a
Spirit.
king. Yeah, we're
So-
asking for a king.
So I've jokingly
Yeah.
said I'm going to write a book called "Get Off Your Ass," and it's not about get up and do something. It's about somebody wants to put you on the back of a donkey and march you through town. And if you're comfortable being marched through town on the back of an ass, then you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Because that's Jesus entered once that way, but that's not the time he entered to change the world. And so we do not want to be put on the back of an ass and march through town, because that's a glorious entry.
Mm-hmm.
We want to quietly walk in and carry the kingdom with us where we go.
Yeah.
So get off your donkey.
Yes. That is powerful.
Yeah.
That is powerful. I just felt the Lord, like, I feel like that was what you just shared just then. It's almost like, take the lid off, take the lid off. And
you can feel the church intelligentsia or whatever, the church structure is like, it's like they're pushing it down, like saying, no, keep this thing in the box. But the box is like, Jack's popping out of the box. There's no.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a familiar pattern. It seems to me like there's at least a couple other times in history where the intelligentsia has said, hey, let's try to push this down and let's try to suppress it. And
so weird.
Seems like a pattern I've heard of somewhere.
Yeah. But I'm so thankful, because there are people like you all. And I say this to people behind your backs, that you guys are leading voices. You guys are leading voices here. I really believe you are. And I know that many people are so thankful, but I want to say something that I was so excited that you're starting to do. And that is the living room. Come on. The living room. Would you share a little bit about that? Because there are so many people that need to even hear, I think the reason I started shaking my head like this is about the parable. You said I shared a parable, is because I listen to you guys weekly. I'm like, what's about this subject? And where you talked about how Jesus was intentional. Now I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry, but Jesus was intentional to use parables and you break down why he did that.
Yeah.
And the connecting with anyway.
Right side of your brain instead of your left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know I've come home to him, because I'll listen to you guys while I'm sitting. My kids will be in youth group, and I'll be like, Bob and Polly time, but I think how many people need to hear this. And I was just so thrilled that you guys are saying yes. I felt the Lord, I felt the Holy Spirit all over you guys beginning the living room. Would you share a little bit?
Thank you.
This has been simmering in our hearts for a while.
Yeah, we made a joke when we got married. It's like, we have one thing in our prenup. We don't have a prenup. We have one thing in our prenup. We are not allowed to start a church. We're like, no.
And again, we've had a few people ask. We've had people want to put, in my words, put us on the back of a donkey. And I don't want to. But what I do want to do is I want to help people find freedom.
Yes.
And so, 5 years ago, we started the website and have been experimenting with how do we just make resource available for people to grow. But one of the things we know is some of that is community and relationship.
Yes.
So we have so much content, as you have just kind of alluded to. Our poor web guy, he's like,
some people have to drag content out of, and he's like, I have a massive, like, multi-terabyte,
70,000 terabyte hard drive.
And we're very thankful for that.
But our desire is to really provide a pathway that people can go down where they don't, they don't need to build a building. They don't need to make us somebody special. In fact, we would prefer, in the vein of not misassigning responsibility, we want everybody to be responsible for themselves.
Yes, and be interdependent with the Lord.
And yet discipleship is at the heart of everything we do. Because I think of when Jesus discipled the 12, they began a journey of freedom following him around. And the journey of freedom and sanctification and becoming the person you're created to be is, to me, the journey of discipleship. Not just memorizing verses and going through disciplines, but transformation.
Yes.
And so we try to make everything available. But what I kept itching on was, like, people come up to us and go, where do you guys go to church now? And the answer is, we we haven't for a while.
Yeah.
We were a part of a church called the Cup and Table Company. It's a home-based church.
Mhm.
And a friend of mine was the pastor, and he kind of had this vision for keeping it always small and keeping it very relational
Yeah.
and just multiplying if it got big. And so we were part of that. About 3 or 4 months ago, it stopped meeting.
Yeah. He's like, I think I need to stop for a
It's
bit.
just time
Yeah.
for transition in his life,
Yeah.
and he
Sure.
just needed to stop. And we're just like, it's really, I'm gonna say, at the core of my teaching, there's a distinction between the two trees in the garden.
Yes.
There's one that's based on a natural, spontaneous flow of life, and then there's one that's filled with the knowledge of what's right and the knowledge of what's wrong. And we've built too many processes in the knowledge of what's right and what's wrong, and we've built too much teaching and discipleship by telling people what's right and what's wrong,
Right.
instead of the spontaneous and organic flow of life. And so what we want to do is just open up on, right, we're going to start with every other Sunday.
Well, we're starting with on Easter morning.
We're starting,
this
Sunday.
Sunday. Yeah, we're launching, and then every month
10
yeah.
o'clock Central Standard Time.
Yeah.
And
So
let
good.
me just say, someone was disappointed because you have to be a subscriber to be a part.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, somebody
yeah.
somebody mentioned to me, oh, I didn't know I had to pay $12. And we pay for the website. It's an expensive website.
Yeah.
And we just want subscribers to, help us pay for the website. But the other side of that is, if people don't know us at all and they're watching this, you can get a 3-day free subscription. So get it Saturday.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so good.
Go on Saturday. And if you're watching this after Easter, find out it's either the first or the third Sunday,
Mhm.
and get it the Saturday before, and just join us in the living room for free.
Yeah. Well, and they'll all be recorded.
They'll all be
Yeah,
recorded.
so you can watch them. Yeah.
And so we want to provide a place where people can meet together online. There's a social media community element to the website, and then all the content will be preserved in the living room community, so people can go back and watch other episodes.
Mhm.
It'll be I have this thing about worship. I'm just going to say, I love musical worship.
And your voice is gorgeous, by the way.
Oh, praise God.
Wow.
Praise God.
But I fear we have convinced people that worship is only music.
Mm.
Like, you can't worship if you don't have a good CD, or if you're not in a big environment with a band.
Mhm.
Come on.
And or if you don't like the song, whatever it is. I fear that we've convinced people that worship is only music, and therefore they depend on music to say they had a worship experience.
Wow.
One of the things I want us to do in the living room, we will have some musical opportunities.
Yeah, we've got some friends too, and
But
him.
I want people to learn to worship without music.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so our goal is community and spiritual growth, connecting people to God for themselves. We do not want to be the go-between.
Mm-mm.
That's where the responsibility piece comes in a spiritual community. Is, I always think about the scene in Footloose where the dad goes, I am responsible for the spiritual growth of all these people. And I'm like, well, bummer for all of you guys then.
Yeah.
How's that working for you?
I feel like I'm responsible for my growth, and she's responsible for hers.
So
And
good.
if not, we have misassigned responsibility, and we all know what that means, right?
She's so big.
Yeah.
It's where spiritual abuse begins, is when somebody takes responsibility for someone else's spiritual growth. All of us are 100% responsible for our growth pathway.
Mhm.
Can we find someone that we trust? Can we find people whose teaching is helpful? Can we read some materials that are helpful? Absolutely. But I'm responsible for my growth, and nobody else's.
Yeah.
We just want to create an online community that we can help facilitate the growth that people want to have.
Yeah.
And it's going to be organic.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll teach.
Yeah.
We'll worship, but it won't always be musical.
Yeah.
I love that.
It'll be, right now it's Zoom based. You'll get the link inside the paywall of the website. The other reason why we're doing it on our website is because Facebook and all that kind of stuff, they tamper things. And
Yeah,
we
they do.
actually know people. One of the reasons why we started our website some of those social media platforms literally erased all of their stuff.
We had one of our abuse advocate friends
lose everything.
Years of recordings.
Yeah. And we were like, oh! So, I mean, we had stuff already stored other ways as well because of how we record, but there's also a safety issue for people who join our website as well. There's another layer of safety that Facebook does not give, and that we can help monitor that more than any of the other social media platforms.
In the abuse advocacy world, a number of people use pseudonyms on Facebook because they're being stalked or they're in danger from their exes or from the person they're divorcing. And so, our hope is that they can be, we don't have a lot of, we don't have any algorithms. We're not going to, there's no advertising on there. It's just pure community. And if someone's harassing somebody, we'll just cut them off.
Bye-bye.
So
that's beautiful.
So, but we're really excited about it. We're excited to just connect with the community because and the other thing about being like what you do on any of these, podcasts and video casts and stuff is it's worldwide. People can watch anywhere from their living room as well. And so, it's very much our heart to just create a community for people.
Polly came up with the name of the living room.
Oh, I love that.
I love the double meaning of it.
The double meaning. Yeah. Living room.
This is our living room we're sitting in, but it's a room of the breath of life.
Yeah.
It's a place where living comes from.
Exactly.
So. Yes. Yeah. So good. I'm so thankful you guys are doing that. And I wanted to say, Emily is asking, Emily Gore, she's asking, are you guys hosting, Bob and Polly, a conference where people can come and learn or anything like that anytime soon?
We used to do that. And we
2020 changed a lot of that.
It did. It did change. Yeah. And so, but keep an eye out on our website for events. Mostly what we do is we get invited to things, and right now speaking at those kinds of conferences, but we haven't hosted one since 2020 actually.
Emily, I would say go to Think Differently Academy and do the 3-day free subscription. Start depending on, so there's a freedom pathway, which is our 27 hours of your personal freedom journey. Or there's the Take Your Life Back from Abuse pathway, which is more hours than I know how to count.
Yeah, but
and there's a lot of the conferences that we put together on abuse, getting your life back from abuse. That's those two things are available to subscribers all the time.
Yeah,
and then we monthly rotate a course. This next in April, it's going to be Conversations with God, learning to hear God's voice personally for yourself. And so that's for subscribers. And then of course subscribers also get to come to the living room when we're doing that and Think Different TD Talk on one Thursday every month, where we just get on and have conversation with our members.
This. We have chats. Yeah.
And then as far as conferences, then you'll find out about them if you're a part of all that stuff.
So if we throw one, do one, put one together.
We talked about doing a small intensive, like taking 15 or 20 people somewhere and doing just like an intensive 5-day breaking the power of your past, or 5-day recover from abuse. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we're experimenting with some models where instead of large groups, we take smaller groups.
Yeah. We have our first one in May.
Yeah.
Doing a marriage retreat.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's already full. So.
Yeah. We're excited. So
that is awesome. Well, we need to figure out if Kentucky's on your, we need to get you to the barn, right? Sometime.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. But
yeah, I love Kentucky.
There's no institutions at the barn.
We're going to raise the barn.
Are you saying you need an electric guitar player? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Are you kidding? He would have a ball. He already said, he was like, I got some videos where he was playing guitar. He was like, he's a guitar guy.
He had a funny joke about Abe Lincoln or something playing guitar.
Oh yeah. That meme that I posted
that was awesome.
a couple weeks back. Yeah,
some kind of AI Abe Lincoln.
4 chords and 7 beers ago.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. What can you do? I feel like we could keep you guys. I want to honor your time. I've already kept you guys so much longer, but it's been so rich. And I know that you're going to have some new subscribers, because there are people that this is a new thought. This is a new thought. And they, like me at one point in 2017, they finally are finding language that helps them to hear, like, oh, this is God's heart. And we just can't thank you enough, and thank God enough for how he uses you guys, and the way he's going to continue to use you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you
having
guys.
us, inviting us, and thanks for
For
coming,
inviting
Joe.
us into your
Yeah.
living room.
Yeah. Yes.
We were going to invite you into the barn, but that didn't quite work out like we wanted to.
Maybe because we're supposed to come to the barn in person sometime.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yeah. Emily's saying Myrtle Beach. Now the beach. Barn and beach. I think we can do that.
We could be there for a beach event for
It's
sure.
true.
Yeah.
Well, we would meet at the beach too. So that sounds really good. Well, God, I just thank you so much that you are the healer, God. I thank you that you are the God who restores. You're the God who sees. And I just thank you right now for everyone that's listening or that's going to listen, that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you would bring them in, that you would bring them in and awaken them to your heart concerning these things we've talked about, that there would be, as Bob and Polly share, a metanoia, that you would begin to take over brain waves, to begin to heal hearts, awaken people to true love. And we just praise you, God. We thank you that you are exposing all that hinders love. I thank you, God, that there are people that are getting braver, that are finding their voices, and they're beginning to speak up because you're giving them courage. And I ask, Lord, that you would just continue to strengthen those people, but that they would find a place to heal, that there would be safety, that just as Bob and Polly were talking about the living room, God, bring people into living rooms where they meet and not only find true connection with you, but with one another. Yes. In safety, in true fellowship, just as the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, just as you are one. Make us one in that kind of love and safety, where there's no hindrance and there's no darkness. Lord, I just thank you for what you're doing. We thank you for what you're doing, God. We thank you for our own little reformation. We thank you for the beautiful new reformation. And we say, yes, God. We say, yes, God. And we just declare, I know I have Psalm 147, but I actually want to just say this. We declare you are the Psalm 18 God. And we just agree that you are the one that rescues us. You're the Psalm 18:17 God. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place, and he rescued me because he delighted in me. You are the Psalm 18 God, and we just agree with your alive and active word. And we just thank you for the way you're awakening us. You're using your word. You're using Bob and Polly Hamp through the power of their testimony and their authenticity, their vulnerability, their humility. Thank you that the true revival is found in these spaces, God. And we just say we're so hungry for that.
Yes.
And we thank you. You're meeting that hunger. And even the hunger that we're feeling, you put in us because you're going to satisfy it. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because they will be filled. The hunger that you're stirring in so many for the real thing is going to be met. So we just thank you for that, God. And we bless Bob and Polly and all that are listening. And we just thank you for who you are in each one of them. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you guys so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being
Truly
here.
an honor. We could keep you all night, but we're not going to. To all that were listening, I want you to know how to connect with Bob and Polly Hamp. I'm going to have in the comments below on Facebook, and also in the comments on our YouTube channel exactly how you can connect with them. I will put their website there. I want to encourage you, whether you are someone who has gone through abuse, or maybe you're someone who wants to understand it so you could better walk with people in your church, in your fellowship, please go join. $12, you're getting like a wealth of knowledge. And I believe we're going to see more of this exposed in this hour, because the kindness of Jesus is exposing abuse. He's exposing the darkness. And I think for those of us that want to understand it and welcome and help support those that are walking through it and really agree with God, this kind of information is going to be huge for us. So I encourage you guys to check them out, go follow them, join the living room, and join their academy. And again, thank you so much, Bob and Polly. Did you want to share anything else?
I think just real quick, that abuse videos actually will always be free. So you do not have to, if you don't have $12 a month to be able to join our website, that abuse video will always be free. So you can get that on our website, because we very much believe that message needs to get out. So, and we just are very grateful for you guys inviting us into your home. And is there anything you want to say?
Anything I say would start another hour.
It's true. We get excited. We want to say all the things. So.
Oh, we're going to figure out how to get you to Kentucky. But
we love that.
Good night to all, and hope you guys have a wonderful week. And thank you for joining Beholding Him, Becoming Enamored with the Ways, Names, and Character of God. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.